Hello. I can't hear you, Raghav.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Mudit.
Guys, can I request all of you to have your cameras on? I'd like to see your faces when I'm speaking. Yes.
Okay. Uh, yeah, so my name is Mudit. I have cleared 5 papers from IFOA till now,
Okay.
and I have total around 2 to 2.5 years of experience,
Okay.
and 1 to 1.5 years of experience in general insurance industry.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, so anything
Right.
else that you would like to know
No,
about
no,
me?
that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
That's enough. That's more than sufficient.
thanks.
I Pooja. I have overall of around 4 years of experience. I have
Okay.
worked in life for a year, then moved to non-life.
Okay.
I have majorly non-life pricing experience, majorly GLM modeling.
Okay.
I have cleared all my CT series. I've given CP2 and CP3. So my SPs, essays, and CP1 are left.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Almost associate, basically. Uh, Raghav, I can't hear you. Your All right. Not an issue. Get your microphone fixed and we can clear it. But can I assume that you completed your like would you also be like an almost associate? Yeah, all right, chalo. All right. So we've got some fairly experienced people and then some freshers as well. All right, good. Okay. So welcome to SP8 with the Academic Junction. This is a very interesting paper to me personally because I have spent pretty much my entire career in GI pricing. I started my career off in GI pricing and then I continued, and now I am also the pricing actuary of one of the general insurers, direct general insurers in India. So this is a subject that's kind of sort of close to my heart. It's also something that I do day in and day out. So it's something that I feel we can have a very constructive discussion on as we go ahead in the course. So okay, just quick poll. Have any of you attempted any SP paper before this?
No.
You have attempted. Okay.
Yeah,
What about?
I I recently attempted in this September 2024, right?
Okay.
Just to like get the vibe of the paper, like,
Okay.
you know.
Understood. Okay. And Pooja?
SP exam.
Okay. No SP exams. Perfect. All right. So when I start off with any SP7, SP8 material, which I do cover, I start off with a simple explanation of why an SP paper is different from a CP, CB, CS, and CM paper, right? So this helps you even if you have previously attempted SP papers, because sometimes people attempt papers without understanding why they're attempting the papers, right? So this kind of helps you, right? So the primary reason for an SP paper in the actuarial fellowship track is to get some kind of specialization in a particular track. So your C level papers, right? Your CBCS, CMCP papers, they would have fairly been generic in nature and they offer somewhat of an introduction to a subject. Perfect example is CS1, which is the CT6 equivalent, if I'm not mistaken. And in CT6, you basically get an overview of general insurance and you get like an introduction to general insurance. For example, you get an introduction to credibility theory, you get an introduction to GLMs, but none of it is in depth, right? The logic here is that is like a diploma level course, and this is like a master's level course, right? And hence your SP papers have a level of depth that is not seen in your previous papers. So your preparation also has to basically be be a mirror of that level of depth. So if the paper goes into a deep dive of the subject, it is expected from students to also have a very deep understanding, a deep level of knowledge on the subject. The exam questions will also reflect this, and the institute effectively expects students to have a completely in-depth understanding of the topic in question. So the specialization component of any SP subject, and for that matter, SA, is also very deeply important here. The next thing is with respect to complexity, right? Your CP, even your CP1 papers, and if you're cleared, not cleared, that's a separate issue. But many people say that CP1 is perhaps the hardest paper there is. There is some truth to it, but the fact is that even those papers are fairly generic in nature. And why do I say it's generic? Because CP1 has a breadth of information, right? You have life subjects, you have GI subjects, you have to study everything. The difficulty comes because of the volume that is available. But if you look at SP paper, especially SP8, there is not a lot of volume in it. There are only 21 chapters at the end of the day. It's not very voluminous. However, the content is deep, and you have to have a very solid understanding of the content before you can kind of answer questions, right? So if you want to answer questions well, you can answer, anybody can answer questions, but if you want to answer them well, and if you want to be in a position of getting a lot of high scoring marks, then your understanding and the complexity of thought needs to be there, which is often why I put that point here. You have to also note that most of these papers will not have any high level of calculations that is involved. So even the pricing paper, you would, if you're expecting there to be like a lot of calculation heavy questions that are there, very high chance that you're not going to get a lot of calculation heavy questions. Your calculations have been done for in all your previous papers. Here, it is effectively how a pricing actuary thinks is what they want to test. So they test your thinking, they test your ability to create structured thinking, points in your exams. So, that's more important than anything else. Third point is with respect to subjectivity, right? You would not have seen as much subjectivity in your C level papers that you would encounter in any SP level paper. The point of this subjectivity is that there is a lot more thought that is required before you answer any question. And exam questions, because of this, are more difficult to answer and require more careful planning. And finally, this is more of a personal opinion that I usually share with students. I have no data to back it up except my own experiences as a student myself, right? And the point here is with respect to marking, I personally feel that the marking for SP level papers is more stringent than the marking for any other paper like CS, CM and everything. And more so after the exams have gone online. So I personally feel that before they went online, there was slightly more leeway that was given to students because of the fact that you were writing the, exam, and you had only 3 hours and 15 minutes. So sorry, not even 3 hours and 15 minutes. I think it used to be a 3-hour exam when we were writing it on pen and paper. So you only had 3 hours, and like, it's a struggle to write, and you have to. There are real world consequences of writing a pen and paper exam. So there used to be some leverage that was given to students. The benefit of doubt was given to students during the written exams. However, when the exams went online, because of the fact that you have easy access to a keyboard on which you can type, and answers now require there is no subjectivity in your answers. So the benefit of doubt has now shifted to the markers, and markers tend to put a lot of onus on your answers, on whether you have gotten certain points in, whether you have not gotten certain points in. and hence marking has become more stringent in my personal opinion. When after the exams have gotten online, right? So I feel like today more than any other, any other period that the IFO has been active for, exam technique and handling answers with nuance and depth and breadth where required is more important. So these are things that you should build over the course of our class when we kind of discuss all these things, right? Now, before we jump into all those points, let me just give you guys a high level overview. So today's class is going to be fairly generic. I'm going to give you guys an overview. I'm going to give you guys a plan on what we're going to do and how we're going to structure the class. So has anyone worked on pricing before? Just quick show of hands. Pricing, has anyone worked? Okay. Mudit has worked on pricing. Simran has worked on pricing. Good. All right. So we have some experience. That is good. All right. So the SP8 subject effectively gives an overview of how to price or techniques that are used to price direct insurance policies, reinsurance policies, and catastrophe model. So these are the three major components of subject SP8. It's split, like I mentioned, into 21 chapters. About 10 chapters of the SP8 syllabus is common to the SP7 syllabus, and we'll look at it shortly, right? Most of the latter chapters that are there are effectively techniques for estimating best estimate prices. So we will be looking at a whole host of different techniques that are correct that were historically used to price insurance policies. Although I should say that the syllabus when it comes to pricing is slightly getting outdated as we move towards a more machine learning oriented approach for arriving at technical pricing in the market today, right? So there is a slight deviation. Simran's name is Pooja. Okay, can't figure out changing name. That's fine. That's fine. That's okay. All right. So we will also look at not just arriving at a technical premium, right? We will also look at how to arrive at the office premium after arriving at the technical premium. Effectively speaking, you have statistically arrived at what the burning cost of a particular set of policies is going to be. Then the question comes to, okay, now I've got the burning cost. How do I convert this burning cost to a viable office premium? What are the factors that are involved? What are the considerations that I have to think through before I make any changes? What are all the things that I have to account for as an actuary when I am converting the office premium when I'm converting the risk premium to an office premium, right? We will also be looking at the impact of data on pricing, and we will also look at a lot of different hypothetical scenarios where we kind of arrive at the technical price and then the office premium for different types of pricing structures that are there in the market, that are there in the world today. Most of the points that we will do, as much as possible, I will try to give real world examples of pricing that exist. I'll give you real world connotations of giving, different types of risk premium, different types of office premiums. So my kind of uh, uh, takeaway that I want to give you guys would be like a real world understanding and nuance that you can then apply in your exam, which will help you guys, right? I have not updated this for 2024. I will update this shortly, but I don't expect to see a lot of difference in the trends, right? The trends are very clear. The paper is becoming slightly difficult over the past 2 to 3 diets, as we can see in the graphs. The pass mark has been reducing. So with this kind of sort of to me indicates that the paper is becoming more difficult for students, right? Which is both a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing that when it becomes more difficult, there is a bigger opportunity for you to cut yourself from the herd and pass. The bad thing being that it's a slightly more difficult job for you to get there, right? pass rates have been stable for about 40%. And personally speaking, and I can tell you as a person who has topped the IAI SP8 paper and who has had multiple different attempts with the IFOI paper. Many of the times I've failed by even 1 mark, right? So I'll get into that as we go along. Marking has always been a major issue with SP8. So your exam technique is very vitally important. So it's not enough if you know the material. It is also very vital for you to get the way to uh, produce your material on the paper during that 3 hours and 15 minutes that you write, which is going to be very important. And we'll get into that as we practice more questions and we do this, right? So, like I said, 3 different areas. We are going to go into direct insurance pricing, reinsurance pricing, and CAT modeling, right? Like I quickly mentioned, we will explore all the different pricing approaches that are there. We will start with basic burning cost approaches. Then we will move to frequency severity approaches. Then we will look at the most complex pricing approach that used to be there called GLMs. Now that pricing approach has also shifted, and we will discuss the impact of building neural networks, building using data science to arrive at uh, technical price, which is something that I am currently working on. So I will give you some of findings that I have got from that effort, right? So can you just hold on? Just give me 1 second. Sorry, that was my son. Right? So yeah. Then we will have reinsurance pricing. Very important aspect of pricing that is usually overlooked is RA pricing. We will be doing a deep dive on different RA products that are there, and we will explore how to price these different RA products that are there. And one thing to note here is that the RA pricing component is slightly more theoretical than the actual direct pricing component, which is going to be somewhat problem oriented. But nevertheless, a very interesting area that we will go into. And finally, we will get to CAT modeling. And CAT modeling is a very introductory component of SP8, which then becomes like a major component of SA3. So you have some topics in SP7 and SP8, which act as an introductory component in these particular subjects, in these respective subjects. And then when you get to SA3, it becomes like a major, part of the portions that get asked. So SA3 by itself does not have any portions. It only has an amalgamated portion list that you get from SP7 and SP8 with some focus being on some particular areas. And one such areas where there is usually a lot of focus in SA3 exams, especially now because of the impact of, let's say, climate change, is CAT modeling. So if you take any SA3 paper, there is in the past, say 3-4 years, there's a very high chance that you will hit on one question where they've asked about CAT modeling. So this chapter that you study, it's only one chapter. I think it's like 30 pages or something like that, right? It's not even a big chapter. But this chapter basically makes the base for how you attempt your SA3 papers. So one thing I think you would have already noticed a trend in what I'm saying is that SP7, SP8, and SA3 are like 3 brothers or 3 sisters that are there. They are very, very, they're very, very related to each other. And when you study for any of these subjects, please note that you are also studying for the final piece that you're going to try to vanquish, which is SA3. So the portion that you study here is what you're going to use for not only your future as actuaries, but is going to be your final hurdle that you have to clear through as well, right? So I would suggest to focus a lot on the core reading and make sure that your basics are strong. And that will not only help you with your SP8 and your SP7, but very importantly, it helps you with SA3. And I cannot stress that your basics being strong is a very, very big advantage that you can take, right? Now, with respect to, so before we move on to this, are there any questions that you guys have on just the overall structure of the exam, or I mean, the contents that we're going to cover? Any questions? Please feel free to ask. Please feel free to stop me anytime. So I will assume
Just a
no
question on
questions.
approach.
Yeah,
Like, I have one question, like in the sense, content bit is clear, but like, how do we approach the exam in terms of now they have made it closed book and we
right,
type the paper?
right.
Some thoughts on that. Earlier it was open book, now it's
Okay.
closed book.
So have you attempted any IAI papers before?
No.
Okay.
CT3 I remember, but that's
No, so it is
I
going to be
did.
very similar to your previous or current IAI. So even IAI is going to move to exam based uh, approach, right? So oh, sorry, Raghav has mentioned that there are different new products which material doesn't cover. Exams are too lengthy these days. Exams being too lengthy is a very subjective thing, Raghav. I might agree on some papers, but on average, I believe they're not very lengthy. I believe that so I'll tell you why they're not lengthy, at least the IFOA papers, because what happens is the IFOA have a structure in place, right? Once an exam is set by the chief examiner, they have some actuaries, they have some fellows who they call guinea pigs. And the job of the guinea pigs is actually to write the exam and give an honest feedback to the examiners as to whether the uh, whether the exam is difficult, whether it's easy, and whether there's time pressure, whether there's no time pressure. So I do agree that that particular this thing might be like a bias sample because people who have already cleared that paper are writing that paper, but it's not extremely biased because people who write, alternative as like a flip to the argument. People who have written the paper and passed it know the impact or the time that is required to clear those things, right? So, yeah, I would not agree with the lengthy component of it, but yes, what is happening is that the IFOA has been shifting to smaller questions, right? So, for example, in the past, it was not very out of place to see like an 8 marker, but or multiple 8 markers, right? So they'll ask you 3 8-mark questions, so that's 24 marks in just 3 parts. But nowadays they're splitting that 8 marks into maybe 2 2 2 2 or maybe 3 3 2 or something like that, right? So they're asking like questions which are of lower mark value, which is a little tricky because you have to spend a lot more time thinking, right? So that's where you feel the exams are becoming lengthier, but in reality, it's not lengthier. It's just that the structure is slightly shifting. So you can also, if you're interested in knowing how the structure is changing, I'd I'd urge you to look at not the SP7, SP8 papers, but the SA3 papers. So that's where you can see the biggest change in the structures, right? Before it used to be 250-mark questions, but now it's like 425-mark questions. And even within the 425-mark questions, it's part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So there are like 10, 20 parts. So they're just changing how it is. You feel it's longer because of the amount of thought that is required, right? Because let's be frank, 1 8 marker, you get maybe 16 minutes to write, right? So it occupies your mind share. But then if you have 4 2-mark questions, that's the cycle that is required to come in and come out of the answer is that much faster. So you feel more strained. So it's more straining. That I will agree. Uh, Simran, with respect to online proctored, I do agree with you that we are, at least with respect to IFOA, we are kind of in uncharted waters. So, so this was an issue that we faced as students when the IFOA went to online first, right? From pen and paper to online first during the COVID time, right? So we had like 1 month's, we had about 1 month notice, if I remember right. So it's uncharted waters, I agree. And I personally feel that it is better to have a closed book in certain aspects, right? Open book again has its advantages, but closed book, if you know the material very well, you will be in a position to differentiate yourself that much easily, right? So I also feel that when the exam went open book, the exam quality went significantly high. So the question quality went, there was a steep increase in the amount of difficult questions that were asked. So while they said it's open book, in reality, any open book exam, you are you will end up wasting a lot of time if you have to sift through the answers, right? And I've kept telling multiple students this, right? Open book is like it's like a trap that they're setting, and they want you to get lost in searching for the material to make sure that you spend lesser time writing the answers. So the logic of being the exams being closed book kind of, in my opinion, it helps candidates who prepare better, right? And it also helps you to easily differentiate yourself. Raghav has asked a question: how to be sure if our points don't match with examiners' reports? So Raghav, so this is where the answer slightly varies for SP level papers, right? They do give you some leeway for giving answers which are not in the examiner's report. However, that leeway is very small. So let's say that you have a 5-mark question. Probably 1.5 marks will be allocated, as high as 1.5 marks will be allocated for points which you write, which are valid, but which are not in the answers, which are not in the marker script, right? So let's not keep it 1.5, let's say 1 mark. So that's about 20%. So you have a 20% leeway for giving answers where there's no overlap. However, the expectation of the IFOA or the institute, even IAA for that matter, is that your answers have to overlap with the examiner's report, because the examiner's report has more points than what is required. So rule of thumb is 0.5 marks per point. So if I have a 5-mark question, you have to generate at least 10 points. The examiner's report will usually have 15 to 20 points. So the idea here is that they are generating a lot of different answers that are there, and they expect your answer to line up with their answer. Even then, they gave you the allowance. So 10 to 15% to 20% allowance of your answer deviating from the actual marking script. So as long as you give valid answers, which are industry relevant, you will get marks. However, you will not get, so let's assume there's a 5-mark question, and they've given 20 points, but you've generated 10 points, which are fairly industry relevant, but have no overlap. So this hypothetical scenario will never happen, by the way, right? It will never happen, but I'm just giving you a completely left field hypothetical scenario over here. So if this happens, they will not give you 5 marks, right? Even though you given relevant points, they would probably err on the side of caution, and they'll give you maybe 2 or 3 marks. So this hypothetical will never happen. I'll guarantee that it'll never happen. I'm just giving you like a very weird example to fit your point that you mentioned. Clear? But yes, your idea is to align with the examiner's marking script, right? Their thoughts. You have to echo their thoughts. They are checking if you are good to be an actuary, and they are actuaries. And hence, you have to basically say, yeah, I think like you. That's what you're trying to tell the examiners, right? That I'm thinking like you, and hence I need to be an actuary myself. So structure of the exam. 1/4 of the exam is going to be knowledge-based questions. So what are knowledge-based questions? Knowledge-based questions are questions where there is a rote element that is required. They've mentioned something in the textbook, and they expect you to reproduce the content as is from the textbook. So that is knowledge-based questions. 1/4, you can expect 25 marks from this. half the paper will be application-based questions. And application-based questions are basically I call application-based questions as the first derivative of knowledge-based questions, wherein you have some content that has been mentioned in the textbook, and you use that content to derive some answer and fix that and fit the answer or fit the content that you have studied to the answer and nuance the content to the answer that to the question that has been asked for you. So that is application based questions. And about the remaining 1/4 of the paper is usually called higher order skills. And what are higher order skills? Higher order skills are either the second derivative of knowledge or the first derivative of applications based questions, where you have to derive what has been mentioned in the textbook, apply it, and then add your nuance to it. So this is where that is why higher order questions are usually more difficult, because it requires you to really add your depth to the question, right? And usually you have to add like a lot more depth to the question than is normally required for you to score higher. If you take a look at any higher order based skills question answer in the marking script, you will almost always find that the markers are not happy with the answers. And that is the reason, right? They're checking whether you have the ability to punch above your weight. So most of these questions are going to be something that only qualified actuaries can answer very well. But they are asking students that question because they want to see whether you guys can even think in that aspect. So the expectation when you're marking or when you're setting the question is not there that, okay, I only want guys who finish, if I've asked 25 marks of higher order skills question, I want like everyone to get like 20 or 22 or something like that. But the expectation is that you'll have to at least attempt, and you'll have to at least get I want to see how you think in some real world example that I give you, right? So that is what they're testing for. Usually, if you take a look at the answer scripts, the markers will usually say that for this question, we found that many students did not have come prepared, or well-prepared students were able to answer this question very well, or something like that, right? So that is a indication that this was a higher order question, because most of the students will get this wrong. So the idea here is that this gives you an opportunity, and this gives you the if you have enough practice on these kind of questions, gives you an opportunity to score and gives you an opportunity to separate yourself from the herd, which is what the examiners are looking for. And this is something that we will go through in our course on how to tackle these questions and how to answer them in such a way that kind of maximizes your scoring this. So how are we going to structure this course? So we have this diet, we're going to split it into two different things, right? The first is we give you targets on a weekly basis, and we expect you to finish the corresponding lecture that has been stored in the repository that you have access to, right? So we give you the target, and it is your duty and your job to ensure that you complete the lectures on time. And you have to go through the core reading once you complete the lecture, so that you have a solid understanding of the subject that you're going to do. And at the end of the week, we will have a discussion, and I will give you exam style questions that either I have picked up from previous exam questions or questions that I have designed myself, right? The questions that I have designed myself, I'm going to make it harder than the questions that are there in the actual exams. The idea being that the entire discussion that we're going to have is going to be on your understanding of the topic and your ability to answer the questions in a way that satisfies me. So I'm going to act as the marker in this particular this thing, and I'm going to give you guys marks, and I'm going to give you guys feedback, live feedback. So I will be brutal, and if I feel you have done it well, I will tell that you've done it well. If I feel you have not done well, I will tell you that you have not done it well. And this basically gives you a direction. Gives you a direction on where you stand, right? And you can use this to kind of improve your answers And over time, the idea here is that you will have enough feedback to have your answers improved and, basically get yourself over the line, right? That is how I am structuring this particular diet. And the Academic Junction is also going to give you mock tests, unit tests, and assignments, right? And the understanding here is please complete your assignments on time, please complete your unit tests on time, and please complete your mock test on time. So that combined with this is going to effectively, hopefully, pull you through in your actual exam when you write it. Clear? Any questions here? Questions. Okay. So these are important dates. I think somebody from the Academic Junction will also reach out to you with respect to all the relevant dates. I think they're available on WhatsApp. So please reach out to them if you have any questions, any queries. We'll be more than happy to answer. And of course, the course content is split into 21 different chapters. You have insurance products, you have reinsurance products, you have the external environment, the general insurance markets, regulations, data, and you have investigations, actuarial investigations. These are the ones which are fairly consistent with SP7 and SP8. And after that, you have distribution models, you have rating methodologies and basis, you have frequency, severity, and burning cost approaches. Then you have original loss curves. Then you have GLMs. Then you have credibility theory. Then you have reinsurance pricing and cap models. So effectively speaking, if you think about it, it's not very voluminous. Although the challenge here is that the individual content within each subject, like there are multiple theories unto itself, right? So for example, GLM is split into two different chapters. One is 76 pages and the other is 48 pages. But in reality, the entire GLM content, if you look at content that is even available online, it's like an ocean that is there, right? So they have done effectively a disservice to GLM by trying to push it under 120 pages, which in reality, it should be north of like 300 pages, because GLM in itself is an entire different beast that gets like, have anyone tried or have anyone handled GLMs before? Like, do you have any experience with GLMs? You have experience with GLMs. So you'll probably you'll be in a position to understand that what we have here is just a fraction of what is actually there, right? The theory that's actually there. Similarly, with respect to exposure curves, right? Exposure curves is like 51 pages. But in reality, the actual theory of exposure, so exposure original loss curves, the chapter has exposure curves and ILFs. And if you look at the actual theory, ILFs is a separate school of thought that is there. Exposure curves are a separate school of thought that is there. Exposure curves are used for property and casualty, property and some reinsurance treaties that are there. ILFs are primarily used for casualty, and we are basically combine them into one specific chapter, right? So the actual theory in each of these sub chapters that are there, the actual theory is very deep. And if you start going into that, you will be lost in it. So I would urge you guys and this, I say this only for SP8, I don't say this for SP7. I'll urge you guys to dig through a little bit, right? Go one level deeper than the core reading. That will give you a better understanding of what's happening. And that will also help you get a firmer awareness of the chapter, right? And finally, before we sign off, like I mentioned, I have about 13 years of experience in general insurance and data analytics. I currently work for a direct general insurer in India called Chola MS, and I'm the deputy general manager for the actuarial team. I have an FIA with the IFOA and an FIAI with the IAI. I was the topper for SP7 and SP8. Although, please, I'm not really sure of the exact diet. So this is an approximation. So been an Arsenal supporter since 2002. So that's a personal interest of mine. All right. So any questions, guys, before we wrap up? Any questions? Oh, yes. And during our classes, please feel free to ask questions. I keep telling everybody this. Please treat this as one place where you get everything wrong. It is in your interest to get as many things wrong as possible so that you can quickly understand where you're going wrong, right? So effectively, uh, getting everything right is going to give you a lot of confirmation bias. So I would urge you to get as many things wrong as possible. There are no wrong answers. There are no stupid answers that you can give. Please feel free. Don't think anybody is judging you, right? Please feel free to participate as much as possible, and it only helps when you participate, right? So you will be in a position to actually understand where you're going wrong only when you share. Sorry, there was something in the chat. Assignments would be chapter specific. You'll get a detailed list of that breakup. Yes. So it's grouped, right? Chapters are grouped separately. So you'll get separate assignments based on the groupings that we have. Anything else, guys? Any other questions?
I have one question.
Please.
So, like, can you tell us approximately how much time would we be denoting each day to uh, get prepared for April diet?
I cannot answer that question because everybody's structure, everybody's approach is going to be very different. What I can do in 2 hours, you can probably do in 1. So if I tell you 200 hours, it's not going to help you. Right? So in my opinion, that's a very deeply personal question that only you can answer. You would have your own methods to arrive at or to prepare, right? And
So, like, you would be giving us weekly targets, right? So,
yes,
yeah. So I was just wondering, like, how much time would we be
that's what I'm
devoting?
trying to,
Uh,
trying to tell that with it. What I would, so I'll give you a weekly target.
mhm.
I would finish that weekly target in 10 hours, for example. But you might only take 2 because you are 5x faster than me. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different people here. How do I give you an average? I can't, right?
Yeah,
So it depends on you. It entirely depends on you.
got it.
My only uh, point that I would make is make sure you don't do it in the last minute. Make sure you do it over time. So make sure you study a little bit every day. Make sure you space yourself out. So, okay, Raghav has a question. Sometimes the concept for CT subjects are used, but it's been some time. How to cope with that? Uh, can you give me like an example? Okay, GLM, it starts from scratch, so you don't have to worry too much about it. But yes, there are no specific lectures on this. For example, okay, I'll give you an example, right? Integration. It's a common thing that is there. Now, if you don't know integration or if you've forgotten integration, how can I teach you that? I can't, right? The underlying assumption is that you have mastered your CT level papers before you come to your ST level papers, right? I can't. So you have to understand that some things will not be force fed to you. This is not a spoon feeding class, right? You guys, this is not college. You guys are writing this to become actuaries, and please understand that that carries weight, right? And that carries a certain level of standards that need to be met. So this is not going to be spoon feeding that, where I'm telling you guys, okay, this will come, please study this. No, that's not how this class is going to be structured, right? I'm going to give you a probability this might come, but please understand that There's not going to be spoon feeding over here. You guys have to make sure that your basics are in place. So I expect your basics to be in place when you come to study for SP8. Right? So there will not be any specific lecture that I'll give for this. This is like asking, okay, I don't know integration, what do I do? And I'll tell you, study it. Right? So that's the closest example that I can think of at this point, right? So, or for example, if you don't know credibility theory, we are going to take credibility theory. You would have studied credibility theory in CT6, right? I'm not going to take the basics for credibility theory. We are not going to go into EBCT and all those things, right? Because the understanding is you have already studied it. So which means you should already know it. Now, if you don't know it or if you haven't studied it, my recommendation is going to be, please study it. Because that not only helps you with this exam, it also helps you with life. It makes you a better actuary. Clear? Anything else, guys? Anything else? Any other questions? I'll be on for another minute and then we can close. All right then. Okay. So see you next week. What I will do is you will get the material you will get the targets on Monday. So please go through them. And at the end of the week, let's go through some of the questions. Let's have a discussion and let's start. So initially, I think it's going to be a common class with SP7 and SP8. And until it diverges, it'll just be a common class. And then once it diverges, we'll have separate tracks that is there. Okay. Alrighty then.
Have you decided the time yet? Like the weekly time?
All right. You have to understand that I've got my own practice. I've got my own thing.
Yeah.
Right? So
Right.
I will try my level best to keep it consistent.
Okay.
Right? But sometimes, like personal errands might come in. So I've got 2 children now. So personal errands might come in, work might come in the way. For example, January, February, March, as you're aware, is going to be very heavy for me, right? As the pricing actuary of the company, and I'm basically the senior most person in my team. So we have to complete our valuation report, our ALMs, our IRDA reporting and everything. So for example, there might be some days where might have to go into office, right? So in those days, I will call it out as much as possible ahead of time. But for the most part, I'll try to keep it consistent. I'll try to set a time and I'll try to keep the time consistent as much as possible so that you have a schedule that helps you. But yes, I cannot guarantee that it will be there 100% of the time.
Sure. Thanks. Works.
Yeah, hi. Can it be like same time onwards from now? Because I'm on a different time zone, so it can be difficult to
No, I understand
like
that. What time zone are you in? Are you in the UK time zone or?
yes, UK time zone.
Okay, so what I will do is I will structure the classes in such a way that it's also comfortable for you, right? So 11 in the morning India time might be 4:30 for you, right? So it might be very difficult. So what I'll do is I'll structure it such that it's in a at least it's in a relevant time zone for you. I was not so when I said 11, I was not I had no idea that UK time
No,
zone
it's
joining. So that's why I suggested 11. But for example, yesterday's SP7 class, I kept at 8 in the night, right? So that would have been, there was another person from the UK who joined that. So he was fine with that. So I'll try to schedule it
yeah.
in a time. So now that I know that we have you as well, I'll schedule it in a time that's comfortable for you and comfortable for the India folks as well, right? So I'll make sure that I have that in mind.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming. See you next week. And please start the prep and all the best for your SP8. Is there anyone who's doing SP7 as well this time? I can't see everybody, so please just call it out if you're doing SP7 as well.
Do we have enough time? Like, I wanted a recommendation. So I work in MNC, so my December, January is gonna be light.
Uh-huh.
So
See.
I have pricing because I'm not, this is my first SP exam. So I haven't taken that decision yet.
See, if economics is not a problem, then I would suggest go for it. Right? But it does require SP7 and SP8, especially the first time that you're doing, requires some amount of prep. If you've done it before, like if you have 1 or 2 attempts that you've given before, then I would have told you, yeah, go for it. It's okay. But then if you're starting from scratch, then it requires a certain amount of prep that is there, right? Because even though there are 10 chapters which are common, you need to practice. Those are there. If you can give the time or if economics is not an issue, I would urge you to give it. And when I say economics, I don't mean
Company-based.
economics, the subject, right? I'm talking about
I got
economics
it.
as in your finance. If
Yeah,
finance is
finance.
not an issue, then yeah, go for it. If $300 is something that you can throw and forget, is it 300 pounds or what is it now?
I don't know, but I know company pay. It's around 35K in Indian rupees.
Yeah, that's 300
Uh,
pounds, right?
so
So
yeah, that's
300 pounds, yeah, if your
so. But it's
company
like,
pays for it, yeah, but you have to understand the companies don't pay for all the attempts. So please.
yeah, at
Yeah,
least
so
two
that's why I said if 300 pounds is not a big issue for you, because if your company pays for the first attempt and then they say they're not going for they're not going to pay for the second attempt, then it becomes an issue, right? So if that's not a
Yeah.
showstopper, then I would suggest go for it.
Yeah, we have 2 attempts, but it's just about how will I be able to, do we have enough time? I've started
Yeah,
doing
but 2 attempts
GLM
have to
because
be
I knew
meaningful,
GLM,
right?
so I've
So you
also
understand that, right?
dividing
So
2 attempts and
there's that trade-off that you have to account for. The attempts have to be meaningful, otherwise it's not worth it.
yeah, okay. I think I'll start preparing and then take this call
Yeah.
when we have exams. Like
I think Jan is the
probably
cutoff
we need
date.
to fill them.
Jan or something is the cutoff date.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Thank you guys. All the best. See you next week.
Thanks.